will, law, and pleasure. The movement of God toward man is not chaotic nor contradictory, but ordered and progressive, moving from eternity into lived obedience. This movement may be understood as will, law, and pleasure, not as competing principles, but as a single divine flow. God's will exists first, eternal and unchanging. His law reveals the path by which that will is walked out in time, and his pleasure is the final delight when his purpose is fulfilled. Thus, God's will is eternal, God's law is instructional, and God's pleasure is the end toward which all obedience moves. As the Lord himself declares, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, the things that are not yet done, saying, My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Isaiah 46:10. The will of God answers the fundamental question of what man must do. We do what we do because God has willed it, and his counsel cannot fail. The will of God does not originate in time, circumstance, or reaction. It exists before time, space, and matter, and therefore cannot be frustrated by men, sin, or systems. It is not something merely to be studied intellectually, but something that must be discerned spiritually. Scripture exhorts believers, Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 17. The Apostle Paul further clarifies that this will is good and acceptable and perfect. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Good because it aligns with God's nature, acceptable because it delights him, and perfect because it lacks nothing. It is the will of God that his people win the battles that belong to the Lord, both inwardly through self-examination and outwardly through discernment. It is the will of God that we receive the Spirit and the new heart he gives, and that we read, see, and understand the writing of God, not merely on tablets of stone, but upon our hearts. Ultimately, the will of God is transformation itself. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. This transformation culminates in new birth and kingdom life, as Christ taught us to pray, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. Thus, the will of God defines what we obey, what we do, and what God himself desires accomplished. The law of God, by contrast, answers the question of how we do what God wills. The law is the revealed means, the defined path, and the divinely set limits through which obedience is ordered. Scripture affirms that the law is holy and the commandment holy and just and good. Romans chapter 7, verse 12. The law regulates conduct and establishes boundaries, but it does not impart life in itself. It governs outward action but cannot cleanse the inward man. Because of this, the law must be faithfully observed and rightly taught by those entrusted with it. For the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth. Malachi chapter 2, verse 7. Yet Scripture is equally clear about the law's limitations. It cannot remove filth, it cannot perfect the soul, and it exposes sin by naming transgression. By the law is the knowledge of sin, Romans chapter 3, verse 20, and the law made nothing perfect, Hebrews chapter 7, verse 19. This does not render the law evil but incomplete when isolated from obedience. Therefore, God declares, to obey is better than sacrifice. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 22, revealing that obedience is not ritual compliance but alignment with his will. Finally, the pleasure of God answers the deepest question of why we do what we do. We act not merely because we know the law, but because we have heard God and desire what delights him. God's pleasure is not found in method alone, but in fulfilled purpose. The Lord hath done whatsoever he hath pleased, in heaven and in earth, in the seas and all deep places. Psalm chapter 135, verse 6. The pleasure of God is the end toward which obedience moves, and it operates in every domain, heavenly, earthly, spiritual, and temporal. Because God looks beyond external compliance, he searches the heart, saying, Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts. Psalm chapter 51, verse 6. Where the will of God is discerned, the law of God is rightly walked, and obedience flows from the heart. God is pleased. This divine triad, spirit, path, and action, is how will, law, and pleasure operate within man. The spirit produces fruits and gifts that bring life and transformation. The path, defined by the law, provides order, limits, and direction. And action expressed through obedience fulfills the will of God with eternal consequence. This is not merely time, space, and matter at work. It is eternity touching time, space, and spirit. Until God's will is done, His law is fulfilled in obedience, and His pleasure rests upon His people.